The biggest reason we don't fulfill our potential is because we're afraid of feeling a negative emotion. Welcome to the Connect Method Parenting Podcast, where correction is out, connection is in, and your kids want to listen to you. I'm Andy Martineau, creator of Connect Method Parenting, here to help you stay calm, confident, and connected no matter what. Howdy, everybody. We're going to talk about emotions today. We're just diving right into the meat today. How do we feel our emotions? Now, this might sound kind of funny, might be confused why we're talking about this today, because it feels like we should all understand how to feel our emotions. Humans are very emotional creatures. However, most of us don't know how to feel our emotions. We're either completely oblivious, we are uncomfortable with feeling our emotions, we want to feel our emotions, but we feel like we don't have strong emotions. And oftentimes when I suggest this to the parents I'm working with inside of League, I say, okay, we got to feel this emotion. We've got to go from mad to sad. We got to go all the way to futility. They look at me sometimes with a blank stare, which I get. This was completely me, deer in headlights, when I started to try to feel on purpose with the intent to process my emotions all the way through so I wouldn't have this undercurrent of frustration and upset in my body that caused me to lash out at people. I really wanted to do the work, but I didn't know what to do. And I didn't even know it was a thing. I didn't realize that I could have emotional constipation, so to speak, because I hadn't processed and relieved myself of unproductive emotions that were no longer serving me, that were no longer necessary in this moment. But oftentimes we're afraid to ask. I know it sounds weird. We think we should know how to feel. So that's why I'm doing this podcast. I'm doing it for everyone out there. And if you're in League with me, if you're in the Pivot, if you're in CMP Mastery, this is 100% for you too, because you're going to understand what I say at a deeper level because we have done so much work on this, but there's more layers. There's always more layers. I feel in my own journey that there are still more layers of understanding of how to better use my emotions in a productive way, to process them in a way that feels healthier, to metabolize them in a way that serves me and catapults me to my next level of growth. So that's why I'm talking about this today, is because lately I've really been thinking about emotions. I've been thinking about it because it's coming up a lot inside of League. It's coming up a lot inside of me. As a family, we're about to have quite a bit of a transition happen, and I'll clue you in on it later, or maybe by the time this podcast comes up, you'll know what I'm talking about. And I'm having a lot of emotions around it. I thought I would have only positive emotions around it because it's a really good thing. It's an exciting thing. I'm having the whole gamut. I'm having fear and worry, a little bit of anxiety, which is very fascinating to me. I'm having some sadness and grief because it's a change. And even though it's a good change, it's still a change and I'm letting go of things. And I had the same experience earlier this summer where I had some cancer, some skin cancer. It runs in the family. Most of my siblings have had skin cancer removed. My dad has had a ton removed and on his face as well. But for whatever reason, mine was on my forehead and I thought I would be totally fine, but I wasn't. It's not even a big deal. It's not a dangerous thing. I caught it really early, so they cut it out, no problem. And I was supposed to have an office hours call the next day, and I canceled it because I was an emotional wreck. And I love the experience of being a human and feeling our emotions. And sometimes they surprise me, they inhibit me, they compel me, they excite me. And I love all of the different things that emotions have provided for me and for my family and for my kids and for all of you amazing humans out there. So I decided to dedicate a podcast to talk about literally how to feel our emotions. Now, I want to be clear that a lot of the things I'm talking about today on this episode is about how you as a mature human with a fully developed brain can process your emotions. I'm going to do another episode at some point and gear it really towards the kids or any human with a not fully developed brain. And that podcast will also apply to us as adults. But what I want to say is that some of the stuff I talk about today is going to be impossible, at the worst case, challenging, at the best case for some of our kids to do. So what I'm speaking to today, take it for yourself. Don't try to go teach your kids. Just be the example of a mature parent who's processing their emotions. So first of all, we've got to get this out there. There is a difference between emotions and feelings. in the developmental psychology world, they separate the two. I love that they separate the two. I remember hearing these two definitions and thinking, thank you for the clarity. This is very helpful. So I hope it helps you. So emotions are automatic. They are the result of the chemical release that happens in our body when we come up against different situations in our life based on the filters, the beliefs, whether it's conscious or subconscious in our mind. So not always the same for everybody, but an automatic chemical release that causes a vibration, some people call it, an emotional signature, sensations in our bodies, all of those things. So that's an emotion. Now, feeling. Feeling is the cognitive awareness of the emotion in our body. So we can have emotions without feeling them. Emotion refers to the psychological response in the body, like the increased heart rate, the sweating, the muscle tension. Emotions are the automatic, instinctive reactions we have to stimuli. Feelings refer to the subjective, conscious experience and interpretation of that emotional state. So feelings are the mental experience of the emotion. In other words, emotions are the physical, biological reactions, while feelings are the mental and psychological interpretations and experience of those emotions. Feelings arise from emotions, but they are distinct. For example, if you see a snake, your initial emotion might be fear. Your heart races, your palms sweat, your muscles tense up. The feeling associated with that emotion could be the conscious experience of being scared or afraid. The key distinction is that emotions are psychological, while the feelings are the mental awareness of the perception of those physical states. Both are important parts of our overall emotional experience. Okay, now if you want to pause right now and go listen to that again, I encourage you to. If this is the first time you've heard the two words differentiated in such a way, defined in such a way, go back and listen to it again. But simply said, emotions are the automatic result of the experience, the stimuli in our world. Feelings are the cognitive experience of that emotion. Got it? Now, I want to distinguish the two because the emotions happen and then we have the ability to come in and start to cognitively process, make sense of them, metabolize them, feel them in a way that hopefully we will use to serve us. That's the ultimate goal. Sometimes that's not the case, but that would be the ultimate goal. So there are 4-ish options when it comes to feeling and emotion. And I'm going to go through all 4 of them. The first thing that we can do, and what most of us do, is resist that feeling. Resist the experience of the emotion we're having in our body. So when people say to me that they know what it is to experience anxiety, when they know what it is to experience anger or fear, a lot of times that's not the case. It feels like it's the case. They're speaking their truth. But when we dig in deeper, what we really are experiencing is a resistance to those emotions. We're resisting the experience. I had this explained to me one time. I think it's a great analogy. I want you to think of a beach ball. Blow up the beach ball. You're at the pool with your friends and it's full of air and you're trying to hold that beach ball underwater. And if you've ever done this, you can feel the resistance of that beach ball trying to pop up. It's trying to break the surface and get up. And you resist, you resist, you resist. Very different experience than simply having the beach ball in your hands as you walk around the pool above the water, right? So the experience of pushing that beach ball under the water and resisting the pressure it's putting on you to have it pop up. And then even having that beach ball, let's say you do release it and it explodes. Have you ever done that? It just pops out of the water. See all the time at my mom's house. Neither of those, the resistance or when it explodes out of the water, neither of those are the same as just experiencing the beach ball floating on top of the water. So many of us spend a lot of time resisting our emotions. We're pushing the beach ball under the water. We're afraid of what we might experience if we just let that emotion float on the surface, if we pay attention to it and not make it a big deal. And we resist until we can't resist anymore, and then we explode, right? I'm trying to be calm. I'm trying not to be frustrated with the kids. I'm trying to have patience. I'm resisting. I can't do it anymore. I yell, explode. So many of us have learned to resist our emotions. There's lots of reasons why. Experiences we've had in childhood, conditioning from society, so many things. And all of them, I want to say, are fine and perfect. There's no problem that we haven't learned if that's the case for you, haven't learned to fully feel our emotions in a safe way. It's okay. But it's good to notice, oh yeah, I am trying to put on the happy smile. My husband used to call it the stretchy smile because it was this fake-ish looking smile. I'm trying to be happy, but you can just tell they're seething with resentment inside or frustration. And that disconnection between I'm trying to resist and put on this happy face. Everyone can see that there's an inconsistency between internal and external states here. And ultimately, we can only handle that for so long. We can only keep that beach ball under the water for so long until we explode. And that emotion, which emotions need movement. They move like electricity. They need to move. So eventually that emotion we've been trying to keep inside of us, because we don't feel it, it's got to move. And it didn't get to move in a healthy way. So it moves in an attacking, explosive way. And we react. And again, not a bad thing. A lot of us never had the chance to learn. It's no problem. No one pulled us aside and said, hey, there's this alternative way where you embrace and you feel your emotions. A lot of us just didn't have that experience. And that's okay. We never learned how to be present. I wish they taught this in schools. I wish they trained parents to do this. I know eventually this is going to just be part of life, because the more we become capable of this as parents, the more our kids become capable, and then they're going to be able to do it with their kids. So it's only a matter of time. But for us who are bridging this gap, who may not have had that opportunity to learn how to feel our emotions, to have space to safely express, to feel the invitation that all emotions are welcome here in this house or in this school, that's fine. We're learning now. It's totally perfect. So the experience of having it be resisted and then having it explode above the water is something we want to start to notice. We want to start to see this. And emotion isn't one of those things that you can go through your life and not experience or acknowledge or have some impact. You know it's there, whether you're feeling them, whether you're resisting them, whether you're exploding and reacting to them. You're going to have some experience with emotions. Our emotions are the fuel to our actions. I like to think of them as seasoning. So whatever the emotion is, happy, motivated, committed, compassionate, resentful, that emotion flavors our actions or our lack of actions. So everything we've created, everything we've done, everything we've put out into the world has been backed by an emotion. And oftentimes we spend a tremendous amount of time resisting the emotions that are present within us. Okay, so that's the first thing we can do with an emotion. We can resist it. So the second thing we can do is react to an emotion. And a lot of people feel that an emotion needs to be reacted to. So let's use our negative context here to show this. Let's say I'm feeling angry. The kids haven't done one thing I've said today. I'm just brewing with anger. And I start to think, I got to let them know I'm angry. And I'm going to get this anger out by yelling at them. So I yell, I throw, I get upset, I lose my temper. And I think that that's going to help me process the anger. But what that's doing is I'm reacting to the anger in a non-productive way in this example, and I'm not feeling it at all. So if you're feeling angry, you might need to scream. You might need to punch a punching bag. You might need to move it through in some way. But experiencing anger is more about understanding that it's okay you have anger, but that it doesn't mean anything about your kids or you, that the anger's there because of something that's not working for you, or the frustration's there because there's something not working for you. And I really want to make sure that you understand that just because you're feeling an emotion, for example, anger or frustration, doesn't mean that in order to feel it, quote unquote, that you have to explode or attack. I could sit here very frustrated or angry, and I could feel it, and I could process it, and I could let it move through, whether I need to do anything physical or not. I might need to go have a little cry about something, get very sad, let that anger process through, go from mad to sad. I don't necessarily need to explode because of my anger or my frustration. So reacting to an emotion, to have an emotional experience, does not require a big explosion. It might, but it might not. So when I'm feeling frustrated about something that's not working for me, feeling frustrated that the house isn't clean, I'm feeling frustrated that the kids aren't doing their chores. And by the way, these are all, I'm frustrated because of a thought I'm having about the kids not doing their chores, or a thought I'm having about the kids not cleaning their room. Hopefully that you can tell that's implied. I'm not blaming the kids, but that's the situation is creating a thought inside of me that has this emotional reaction. And once I've had that thought, like, this should not happen. My kids should be better behaved. They should do their chores. There's a couple of ways that this can be felt. One, I might just feel the chemicals of frustration in my body and say, wow, it's a big hit I just got because of that belief I had. Now, if I just sit with this emotion for 90 seconds at the higher end and simultaneously change my filter, change my belief from the kids should have cleaned their room to, oh, they were just really busy, so they didn't clean it. Or maybe they didn't clean their room and it's okay. I've shared that on the podcast. That was one of my go-to to keep myself in a better place. Or I'm learning how to help the kids clean their room, whatever it is. If I can switch it to a more compassionate, clear thought that creates regulation, I'm going to be able to feel the anger, the frustration pulse through my body, see the situation differently, process through the anger, process through the frustration, let it metabolize out, and then move into something different, a different awareness. If you've heard me tell the baby powder blizzard story, that's what happened. I went in so activated as soon as I saw the baby powder sprinkled all over the playroom. And then I had a different thought enter my head that they weren't trying to make my life miserable. And I needed to fully process the anger, moved through my body, and I let it be there. And then that new thought came in and it created a completely different chemical reaction. Now, if I stayed stuck in the thought, they shouldn't be doing this, this is terrible, this is going to take forever, I've got to take care of this, why did they do this to me? I would continue to generate the chemicals in my body that would fuel that emotional response. So if you find yourself in this situation where you're like, part of me is so upset at these children for doing this behavior, and you can bring in, on the other hand, I also see why they did this, then I can not resist the emotion, not resist the thoughts that created that emotion of frustration or anger. I get to just sit with them and they metabolize away because I see they're not true anymore. And I feel it and I process it and it moves through. And then I get to sit with this other new emotional experience and create a different reality for myself. But it's because I didn't react. Now, if I react, I did start yelling in the baby powder blizzard situation. It was a real story, real life thing. I did start yelling. And I did start reacting. And then I had, on the other hand, emotion come in like, oh, but on the other hand, maybe they weren't trying to make my life miserable. And I was able to go to a different place. So I didn't keep reacting. That would never resolve it. If I just keep reacting or attacking or staying in this cycle, this non-productive cycle, then I'm not ever going to get to feeling it. But if I sit with it and say, just an emotion caused by this belief. Okay. I get that. Not going to make myself wrong for it, but I see it. What's another idea I could think about this situation? I get to see that other part. Then I get to experience both emotions, which I think serve us well, both positive and negative emotions as we categorize them. Although I think all emotions are amazing. So I like to question whether there's negative and positive emotions, but we'll go with it because that's what we typically classify them as. So as we are able to see the contrast, we're able to temper our emotional experience and we don't just go into this reactionary mode that keeps us spinning. Make sense? Okay. The third option we have when it comes to our emotions is to distract ourselves. And I've had a lot of personal experiences with this by doing things to distract myself from feeling my emotions. So this looks like me overdoing something, over cleaning, over exercising, overeating, over socializing, overly being busy or overly entertaining myself. Now, I want to say there have been times in my life where I'm cleaning, organizing, socializing, exercising, and it could be viewed in an extreme way as well, but I'm not doing those things in that case to escape something. So when we're trying to avoid, distract ourselves, escape an emotional experience, that's when we're distracting ourselves from having that emotion in our body. We're not focusing on it. We're trying not to think about it. We don't want to talk about it. We want to pretend it's not even there. It doesn't mean that emotional experience isn't there, maybe being buried away in our subconscious mind as we try to distract ourselves from it. But it means in that moment, we're not wanting to feel it. So we can resist emotion. We can react to an emotion. We can distract ourselves from emotions. And the last option is to feel the emotion. And that's what I want to talk to you guys about on the podcast for the majority of the time. How do you not resist? How do you not react? How do you not distract? How do you feel? And I'm going to give you some options on how I have found it helpful for me to do this. The first and very most important skill that I teach my parents that I work with, that I've taught myself, is a concept called holding space. I like to think of it as a bubble, and I'm holding this space where all emotions are welcome, all thoughts are welcome, there's no judgment. Dr. Neufeld said that there was a school system. Dr. Neufeld, by the way, is a developmental psychologist from Canada. I think his work is phenomenal. And he worked with a school system, and he tells the story that they had what were known as calm down rooms. And he came in to help them change some stuff around. And they changed these calm down rooms to free expression rooms. I think that's what they called them. And the intention was that these rooms were a safe space for the children to yell, to scream, to punch, to feel any emotion. There was no shame. There was no blame. If they wanted one of their teachers to come in and be there with them, they would be there with them. If they wanted space to do it on their own, they would let them do it on their own. And I love that they actually had this physical space for kids to go feel all of these emotions that they feel, because kids feel a lot of emotions and they don't have all of the same cognitive capacity we have as adults to process them. So sometimes they just need to move, and they need to punch and feel and scream and yell. And we'll go more into that when I do the episode that is focused more on how do we help facilitate emotional expression with our kids. But for us, we need to practice holding space for ourselves. And as we hold space for ourselves, have this non-judgmental space where we can feel and process our emotions, we're going to be able to do better with our kids, because our kids really, really need that. Kids are one emotion drivers. They have big emotions until their prefrontal cortex comes on between 5 and 7, 8, 9, 10 even, depending on if the conditions were conducive for that to develop properly. Then they don't even have the capacity prior to that to be able to say, oh, part of me feels like hitting you, and part of me feels like hugging you, or part of me is really frustrated by this, and part of me isn't understanding that this is the deal. So they're trying to have that come online. So they're very emotionally volatile. The toddler phase and the human, timeline is the most volatile and violent stage, because they don't have the capacity to temper their emotions like we do. But we do have that capacity. So that's great. We're going to step into it and learn that more. And that's going to be pivotal in us learning how to feel our emotions from a safe place. But sometimes we're still not going to be able to feel our emotions in a very tempered way. We're going to be lit up that somebody did something. And so learning how to hold that safe space for ourselves and also for our kids without judgment is everything. When we're holding the safe space, I want you to think about you doing it for yourself. So you're not judging yourself. You're not having opinions. They're not relevant. We're trying not to have any reactions. We're trying to just let it be all okay. So holding space is not something that comes naturally to us. We have a lot of opinions as humans, or at least most of us do. This person is beautiful. This person is ugly. This person did something great. This person did something terrible. I like this politician. I hate this politician. This is a great place to live. This is a terrible place to live. This is a good school. This is a bad school. This is what we should wear. This is what we shouldn't wear. So we have these opinions and these judgments. So to hold space is to hold those opinions, put them on hold. Those judgments, anything else that comes to your mind is irrelevant. It's irrelevant. So neutrality is key. So part of holding space for ourselves is putting all of our judgments and our thoughts aside and believing, hey, I'm doing the best I can right now. Can I look at this with clarity? Can I come at it and self-confront? Can I not make myself wrong if I'm being a victim right now? Or I'm feeling something I wish I wasn't feeling? Can I just let it be okay? And this is challenging for us to do for ourselves. It really is. But we need to do it for ourselves, because then we're not triggering ourselves. Oftentimes we're coming in activated. And so to some degree, we're quote unquote triggered. We don't want to double the trigger or triple the trigger. We want to be kind and patient and hold a space where we can just understand that right now we're doing the best we can. And can I find some clarity to know what to do next? That would be productive. Now, if we're doing this with our kids, same thing. We're going to try to put all of our thoughts and opinions aside. They should know better. They shouldn't hit their sister. They should be more behaved. Put it aside. Hold space for the frustration that they feel, for the anger that they feel, so that they don't resist, so they don't react, but instead can feel their emotion. So they can go from, I'm so mad, you didn't let me have a cookie, Mom, before dinner. This is a very simple example. You didn't let me have this cookie, to, okay, you're really not going to let me have this cookie. I'm going to just cry about it and be really sad and understand there's nothing I can do to change this. And they get to go from mad to sad. That's how we metabolize the emotions. That's how we grow. And the tears in a toddler, don't we love toddlers? They're so emotionally volatile, but they show us so much of the rawness of humanity. The tears that they're crying when they're angry, we'll use the cookie example. Mom, I want a cookie. We're like, nope, dinner's in 5 minutes. I want a cookie, right? And they just are so emotionally upset by that answer. If we hold space and don't start getting mad at them and lecturing them and giving them a consequence, which interrupts the natural flow of that emotional process that creates emotional maturity. If we let them be, keep them safe, hold that limit, and we let them go from, I'm so mad you didn't give me a cookie, to, I guess Mom's really not going to give me a cookie and there's nothing I can do about it but cry. The tears that come out of their eyes when they've come to that place of futility, there's nothing I can do to fix the situation. Those tears have the fight or flight chemicals in them. So they're releasing those. The body's saying, well, I guess we don't need to stay in fight or flight anymore. We felt the emotion. We've gone through the whole process. It's not a cognitive thing. Think of a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old. It's not a cognitive thing. It's an emotional limbic system process. So they go through that whole process and the chemicals are released at the end. Beautiful example of what this is supposed to look like in all of us humans, all of us mammals. Humans just get a little tricked up because we have this prefrontal cortex that comes in and starts to make meaning, and it can confuse us. But our toddlers are great examples of what that process is supposed to look like. I go from really angry and frustrated to really sad that nothing can change. And I move from sympathetic nervous system, everything's wrong, to parasympathetic nervous system, back to equilibrium. And that emotional experience makes us more emotionally mature, not less emotionally mature, because we fully feel the process. So, holding space. First and foremost, we need to learn and hold space for any emotion. The whole spectrum of emotions that we experience as humans are normal, they're natural, they're part of the experience. And I base this belief on the fact that I haven't met a single human that hasn't felt all of the emotions. So it must be part of this experience. So when I can hold space for any emotion to appear, to be present inside of me, to be present inside of my child without judgment, then we're more likely to be able to feel it and experience it in our bodies. So let me review how I define this. Emotions refer to the physical response in the body, like the increased heart rate, the sweating, the muscle tension. Emotions are automatic, instinctive reactions to the stimuli we have in our world. Feelings refer to the subjective, conscious experience and the interpretation of that emotional state. Feelings are the mental experience of the emotion. Does that make sense? So in other words, this is just a review of what we talked about at the beginning. Emotions are the physiological, biological reactions, while feelings are the mental, psychological interpretations of those experiences. So emotions is something you have. It's this vibration in your body. And the feeling is the cognitive awareness of that emotion. And there is a slight distinction between a sensation. So let's say I burn my hand on the stove and I have this sensation that is something that's caused by the burning of my skin, and it's sent from my body to my brain. That makes sense. So an emotion is something that starts in our brain, even if it's that limbic system brain. Often it is that subconscious brain, and it's transferred to our body via the chemical release. So for example, if you think about something happy, you think about something sad, you think about someone who you love that's passed away, the thoughts that you're having in your mind are going to create a different emotional experience in your body. And the emotional experience in your body is that a scientist sometimes call a vibration. I believe they can measure it, which is really fascinating. And it's meant to be felt or consciously experienced and allowed. When we try to block those vibrations, we try to distract them, we try to get ourselves away from them, we miss the opportunity of genuinely being alive in the world. It's part of this human experience to have emotions. Emotions are a guidance system. Our emotions are the reason why we do or don't do things. We anticipate a positive emotion, and so we might move towards something. If we anticipate a negative emotion, we might move away from something. We feel a certain emotion, and that determines what actions we're taking or how much energy we have behind it. So holding that space is so important, and being willing to hold it for any emotion. Another thing that's so important is allowing them to be there. the way that you do this is you open yourself up, you breathe, you look, you feel, and you understand that this experience is something that I can choose to feel, or I can resist it, or I can react to it, or I can distract from it. But what I'm going to say is, if we just feel it, if we just allow it, if we stay present to the emotional experience we're having, sometimes it's so fast, sometimes it takes a little bit of time, but we acknowledge the emotions without judgment. Once you do that, and typically this takes a lot less time than you think, sometimes a split-second decision, and all of a sudden we notice what we're feeling, and instead of reacting, we're bringing ourselves back to noticing, back to awareness. Once you do that, once you are able to have the awareness of, oh, there I am reacting again, there I am resisting, there I am distracting, then you can bring yourself back to the present moment, back to your body, back to what you're feeling, and go through the process of resisting to surrendering to the emotion, letting it work its way through, letting it grow you up. One of the hacks that I like is thinking about describing it to an alien or a Martian and trying to explain to them what an emotional experience is when they haven't ever experienced emotion. That's the way I like to pretend to think about it. They don't know what it is to be emotional. They don't have that. So I'm trying to describe it in detail. Well, I feel this in my body. It feels heavy in my chest. I feel a tingling in my stomach. I feel an energy in my head, or whatever it is. And I start to describe it and notice it as if it's not me, almost as if I'm a third person observing myself, and then I'm writing it down in a book or something to explain it to someone else who doesn't understand what emotions are. So many parents I work with are so worried that emotions will take them away, that once they feel grief or fear or anxiety, they won't stop feeling grief, fear, or anxiety. And I get it. I felt that too. It's valid. I understand. And in a sense, sometimes that's what it can feel like for a child, because they feel such strong emotions. But as adults, we have the ability to truly feel any emotion. So once we start describing what's happening, we're able to separate ourselves from the emotion. And one of the things I've learned over the years that really stuck and helped me is the way that other languages, Spanish and French are the two I'm most aware of, but I think it's more than that, the way they describe their experience of emotions. And translated, so I've been told, I don't speak either of those languages, but I've been told that they say it more like I have frustration. So they realize more intuitively, because of how they describe it, that they have the emotion, but that the emotion is not theirs, which makes a big difference. Because when you realize that this is not you, that this is just something happening inside of you or passing through you, I like to think of that as well, a cloud passing through you, then you can feel it, you can experience it, you can let it go through you without it getting stuck inside of you. In English, a lot of times we say, I am mad, I am frustrated. It's so definitive, so defining, but it's not accurate. We're having an emotional experience based on a thought that we have based on the situation in our life, based on a situation that's happening to us. So differentiating me from this emotion is really important. So whether that's describing it to the little Martian and that helps you, if that's observing it from a third point of view, as if you're an author writing a book, whether you think about it like a cloud passing through, or you realize that in other languages that are speaking about emotions in a more mature way, they accurately describe that we have an emotion, we aren't the emotion. The emotion isn't us. A lot of times when I have parents do this, they want to start describing what they're thinking. Now, when you're describing an emotion that you're feeling, you're not necessarily describing what you're thinking. Now, yes, they are related. They're like first cousins. They go hand in hand. But to get the most out of the experience of dropping into the feeling of the emotion, try to focus on what's going on inside of your body. So when I describe anxiety, it's like a little buzz in my solar plexus, a little tingling in my arms, a little heat in my chest, a little tingling or tightness in my throat. Other emotions I would describe differently, but knowing what the sensations are and being able to describe them make them more doable for us to feel them. And here's the other thing. If an emotion is just a vibration in our body, it's a sensation, it's something passing through, it's an experience we're having, then we can see it more objectively. We can see it factually. We can realize that emotions aren't a big deal. They're just part of the human experience. We can hold more space, more compassion. We have an increased ability to sit in the experience of them instead of having them turn into fuel that compels us to do something that we may not really like. So sadness, horror, frustration, terror, fear, when we describe them as physiological vibrations, they become more neutral. And so that's very important because sometimes when we feel our emotions, we get scared because we think they're going to take over us. We feel like they are us, like they are our body, they are controlling us, and we can't tolerate that. But when we describe them as something we have, something passing through, when we get clear on the sensations that they're creating in our body, we have more control over them. They feel less of a big deal. Another thing, and this goes hand in hand with what I was just saying, is find the right words to describe the emotions. So one of them, and I'm going to just emphasize this again, is saying I have this emotions instead of I am this emotion. So I have frustration versus I am frustration. Start practicing saying it in that way. The other thing is go to Google. You can search up emotion wheels, emotion lists. I have them. If you're in one of my programs, go look in any of the workbooks or playbooks you have. You're going to see them. And look at the list of emotions and the names. Naming your emotion, getting more specific. Instead of just saying, I feel down. If you say, I feel discouraged, or I feel disappointed, or I feel frustrated, being able to name that emotion that you're experiencing more accurately is powerful. I believe that labeling, not for everything, but for emotions, helps you wrap your mind around what you're experiencing. And to be able to link the emotion with the experience you're having in your body is powerful. It takes your emotional intelligence, your emotional capacity to the next level. Being able to name what is going on in your body, that is powerful. The first piece is just being present in your body long enough to experience it and then name it. Make sure you're naming it using correct language so it's not becoming a defining thing, but it's becoming an experience you're having. And I think this takes us down the road of becoming experts at experiencing our emotional world, which helps us become experts at helping our kids experience their emotional world so they don't get stuck in their frustration. And then a couple of ways that I think truly help us fully experience emotion is a willingness. So the first piece is allowing. You allow the emotion, you describe the emotion, you name the emotion, but then there's an openness, a willingness to be with it. I like to think about a doorway and I'm, going through the doorway, or I'm going in a slide for some reason is what I think. I'm going down this slide that's labeled with this emotion. Maybe it's fear or anxiety or worry or frustration. Could be a positive one too, but we're using mostly negative ones to illustrate how to feel a negative emotion because we're a lot less likely to feel a negative emotion. We don't want that as much. We're happy to welcome in the positive emotions. But think about this willingness to go down this slide, to go through this doorway of this negative emotion. And instead of trying to hold the door shut or block ourselves from going down the slide, you're willing to walk into the room. You're willing to go with the flow of the slide and experience the energy of that emotion. You're not afraid to feel the emotion that is present with you right now. And the other thing that I've visualized that has helped me as I'm experiencing emotions, sometimes they leave quickly and I don't have to use this, but if it's an emotion that's lingering, it doesn't seem to want to go away. It doesn't seem to want to not be part of my day. Maybe I'm experiencing some shame, some regret, some sorrow, some sadness, and it feels as though it's going to be my companion for the day. I like to think of it as something I'm carrying with me. A purse, a backpack, if it's little, maybe just a ring, but something I'm willing to have with me in my presence today. I'm not reacting to it. I'm not pushing it away. I'm willing to let it be there. I'm willing to have it stick around as long as it needs to. So I am able to coexist with it instead of needing to get rid of it. I'm willing to experience it instead of just get rid of it. And I let it stay as long as it needs to, and eventually it metabolizes its way through. So many times you're going to allow an emotion to be there. You're going to allow yourself to be present with it, to welcome it in, to say, hey, all emotions are welcome here. You can stick with me. It's totally fine. They might need to sit in the back of the bus. They're not driving. They're not the fuel. And as soon as we allow it, things start to shift. Things start to move and it begins to dissipate. That emotion begins to dissipate, maybe within a matter of minutes. Maybe it takes a day or two. It's just a vibration, It's flowing through our body. It's here and then it's gone. We've taken our trip from mad to sad, from resistance to surrender. And oftentimes once we begin the surrender process, our body takes over. It knows what to do. And sometimes it stays there. It's heavy all day. And that's okay. Just keep reminding myself, this is okay. This is just an emotion I'm experiencing. It's not me. It might go in waves, might feel strong for part of the day and then go away. All of that is normal. And if I just allow them to be there, if I just let them come in and out of my awareness, eventually they're going to dissipate. They're going to metabolize. They're going to move through. And when they do, our emotional maturity goes up. Our ability to adapt goes up. Our ability to integrate the complexity of the world and all the things we're experiencing without it throwing us off, it increases. And I will say that your willingness to be present with emotion will require you to be uncomfortable. Negative emotions can feel very, very uncomfortable. But what if we learn to be okay with that discomfort? And if we realize the worst thing that could happen to me is a negative emotion, and I can experience it, I can feel that emotion, then the worst thing that would happen to us is to feel very uncomfortable. And I think this is important to remember. Your willingness to be uncomfortable, your willingness to be present with your emotions is directly correlated with your success, is directly correlated with your growth. Or you could even say, is the cause of your growth and success. The better we can handle our emotions, the better we can show up as a parent. For me, that's motivating. That is one of the reasons I finally let myself sit in some of these negative emotions and committed to working through them, committed to becoming friends with all of my emotions because I wanted to be an example of that for my kids. And if it required me to figure it out, then I was going to figure that out so I could be that for them. So people ask me all the time, why are you willing to be so uncomfortable? Why are you willing to constantly feel these emotions, to put yourself in challenging situations, to continue to up-level your parenting and your life? People might say, well, why keep doing it? Enough is enough. Just stop. And I think for me, the answer to why am I constantly putting myself in these positions that are so challenging to feel so many negative emotions is because I feel as though the gamut of emotions, the buffet of emotions, both positive and negative, increase the experience I'm having in this life. I don't want to avoid any of them. I want to use them for my benefit. I want to use them to grow. I want to become the next version of myself. I don't want to distract from certain things in life. I don't want to have to retreat. I don't want to pretend like I'm not feeling something just because I'm uncomfortable. And when I've learned how to feel all of the emotions, what I've realized is the worst thing that can happen is an emotion. The worst thing that can happen is a painful emotion, a negative emotion. And there's no emotion that I'm unwilling to feel. I want to have the courage to feel any emotions. Does that ebb and flow? Absolutely. But I know that's the ticket to me fulfilling my potential. And I know that's the ticket to my kids fulfilling their potential. If the worst thing that my kids are going to experience is a negative emotion and they aren't afraid of those negative emotions, they aren't afraid of embarrassment or disappointment or frustration, they're going to create an amazing life for themselves. And that's what I want for them. I want to create an environment where they become really good at feeling their emotions. It's one part of this environment because I know if I can create that as part of this environment that is my stewardship as a parent, that they are more likely to feel, that they are more likely to fulfill their potential. The biggest reason we don't fulfill our potential is because we're afraid of feeling a negative emotion. So the more willing I am to put myself in positions that cause me to feel even more negative emotions, the better I get at it. And the better I get at it, the better I get at teaching my kids to do it. And I want you to do the same. I want you to invite yourself to put yourself in positions that are risky or scary or create a little bit of self-doubt or fear. Whether you're in your role as a parent, you're functioning as a parent, or you're functioning outside of it with friends and your career, wherever else you're living and creating in your life, practice feeling all those emotions. Put yourselves in positions where you're going to feel the whole gamut. The joy and love and happiness and the fear and the doubt and the maybe anxiety. Feel it all. Because if you can handle it, you get to teach your kids to handle it. All right, you all, that's what I've got for you today. Have an amazing day. Go connect with your kids. Go feel some negative emotions. Invite them in. And we'll talk to you next time. See you later, guys. Bye-bye. If you enjoyed this episode, you're going to want to check out the 8-week parenting pivot, which is the first phase of my program, the League of Extraordinarily Connected Parents. We're opening up a new round in October. So if you're listening to this live, it's going to be October 7th. If you're listening to this and that date has passed, go check out the website, connectmethodparenting.com, and we'll list the next time we're opening. But if you're listening to this live, go check it out because you can already apply and get accepted into the next round so that you can lock yourself in place to have a huge shift with your kids, to get them to want to listen to you, which is very different than using punishments, rewards, timeouts, ultimatums to get them to listen to you. We want it to be more cooperative. We want better listening. We want a great relationship, and we want to have a ton of fun when we're parenting. So if that's what you want, if what I talked about in this episode resonated, jump over to cmp.works/pivot. I'll put the link in the show notes as well, and find out more about the pivot, apply to join, and we'll let you know if you get in. All right. Until next time, go connect with your kids, have a blast, and pop back in for another episode soon about how to use connection, not correction, to get your kids to want to listen to you. See you later. Bye.